Good to see everybody. Obviously, when I'm in session, it's kind of hard to get up here because we're usually working late into the night. So now the session's over. I'll try to make all the meetings that I can, with the exception of July, because April and I are going to go to Africa for a couple of weeks in July. I know, need a trip away. Actually, the session was pretty tough this year, very, very difficult. All the way back to the first session that I ever served in 1998. I never remember one quite like this one. At the end of the session, everybody was just exhausted. We knew going in that we were $9 billion short on a $32 billion budget in revenue coming in. And if it wasn't for the stimulus money that we got from the Obama administration, you can't even imagine what you would have seen. I mean, it really was a bridge to get us through these 2 years of about $4.2 billion that we got from the federal government. That without that, we would still be in session. And I don't know, honestly, what we would do. It would just be an absolute disaster. Not only for the state, but it would have trickled down to a lot of other areas as well. To be able to get through this 2-year period during this economic downturn, we had to make a lot of cuts to a lot of things. It really, really was difficult this year. Some of the decisions that we had to make. And in the end, our choices were to either, of course, we were going to accept the stimulus money from the federal government just to keep programs going, just to keep things alive. But there's a lot of things that we scaled back quite a little bit. And during this 2-year period of time, there are people that are going to be negatively impacted. We had hoped to do more in some areas. We had hoped to put a revenue package on the ballot. The Senate and the House couldn't agree amongst themselves and between each other. At the beginning of the session, you may have heard the Senate wanted to do an income tax. I don't think that there was any chance that that would have ever passed, and I think if it had been passed, it would have been immediately overturned. The House wanted to do a sales tax increase to fund some human service issues, and I think everyone wanted to do a package that would have given more authority to the counties to be able to go back to folks to raise revenue for specific things. And although we provided some very small things, most of the major things we just couldn't get any traction on and get them done. So we built a budget that has no new general tax increases in it, because there was a lot of folks that said, at this point in time, how can you raise the sales tax without at least going to the voters? Because the people that are getting hurt the most right now are at the bottom end of the income level that have to purchase things. You know, what are folks going to do that just can't make ends meet? How do you raise property taxes when you have 10% of the homes in foreclosure? And there's a lot of logic behind that. So we took the stimulus money, we did some spending that you normally wouldn't do. It's kind of like buying food with your credit cards. We took money out of a capital budget that normally builds projects, and we used some of that money so we wouldn't have to shut down so many things. And those are hard things to do, and there is a little bit of a day of reckoning that we'll have to deal with, but we felt we can't have people die in the streets. And so we did some fairly difficult things. We raised a number of fees on certain types of things, like court fees for filing documents and so forth. There's a lot of little things in there. But we did what we thought was necessary to do to bring forth a budget that basically no one likes. I would say that virtually every legislator that voted for that budget was very uncomfortable with it. We suspended the pay increases for teachers for 2 years. We actually suspended both of those initiatives. We did, as part of the legislation, promise that we would not only put those back into place in 2 years, but we would also make up that difference that we've taken out, which I think was very important. The problem we had was every step of the way the Republicans wanted to stop all those things permanently. And we were like, no, we're suspending them, we're going to make up the difference. And they're going, no, we're going to cut these out permanently. So we had all these horrible floor debates. But in the end, I think we did produce a budget that provided the most important basic services that we had to do, and dealt with some very harsh realities of the economic times that we're in. We did pass some good policy legislation this year. The domestic partnership legislation is very important. And I thought it was great that the Seattle Times, I don't know if you saw it or not, urged people not to sign the petition gathering to overturn that. And then, of course, people have been furious about that. But the domestic partnership law was a great move forward. We did a lot of good things. And here's the unfortunate part about the session. The bad things so overshadowed a lot of good policy things that we did. A lot of people don't know too much that we actually did a lot of very good things. We put more money into construction projects this year than ever in the state's history. ever. I mean, and when you see the construction projects that are going to, as those start going to bid and out to work here this summer and into this fall and into next year, the numbers of jobs that those will create and the improvements that we're going to make to our infrastructure are going to be extraordinary. So, although it was a tough year, there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic. There are some very good signs right now that we're kind of bottomed out on this economic disaster that was created by 8 years of the Bush administration telling folks at Treasury and the SEC, everyone, that you simply can't. You know that when they went in, we actually got into the details of this because I'm on the Financial Institutions Insurance Committee, and the more we probed and the more questions we asked. If government regulators went to MJ and said, well, MJ, gosh, do you really own all the securities and things that you say you do? And you say, yeah, I do. That was it. That was an audit. We allowed all of the financial institutions to self-police themselves. And so all the federal regulators could do was knock on the door, ask them if they were being honest and not cheating people and weren't lying, but they couldn't ask them to show them the books. I mean, it was absolutely crazy. So it's no surprise that we had this disaster that was completely created by the Bush administration. I mean, we will have repercussions. This disaster that really, truly was created, and it wasn't an accident. This was intentionally, things that were intentionally done through George Bush and that administration. It was the most corrupt administration in the history of the United States. What they stole and how much they cheated and allowed people to cheat other folks out of their money on, we won't even know for a long time. I mean, it's just extraordinary. Now, we did take a lot of steps on the state level for our state chartered banks and some other things with financial institutions to try to shore those things up, and in a lot of other areas. But the damage that this administration done is catastrophic. Everything from environmental policies to what we did with the financial institutions is extraordinary. So, a lot of people are saying, stop blaming people, you know, just get things done. And I'm saying, true, but if we don't learn the lessons of what caused those to happen, then what happens again? It's like treating somebody for having lung cancer for smoking and saying, well, but you can't talk about smoking. You know, I mean, if somebody's a smoker, don't mean to. But the point is, you know, you have to understand what caused this problem in the first place. And so to make sure you don't have it happen again. So I'm very happy with the Obama administration. I know they're having their ups and downs a little bit, but I feel like our country's going in the right direction. This 2-year budget in this session is really, it's just a bridge to get us to the other end of those 2 years. At the other end of those 2 years, things have got to be better, or we will have even a more difficult year than we did this year. I'm very confident it will be. I really feel that we're going to have a nice, gentle, gradual economic recovery that's going to be built on good jobs. I think the construction industry, I've talked to Tim a little bit about this, they're already seeing some of these major projects that's going to create a lot of work for carpenters. As those are spooling up, these are good living wage jobs. And I think I see some bright signs, but the session was a tough session. I was very weary by the time we got done, especially the last day or so. The labor folks aren't very happy at the end of the session over some pieces of legislation that didn't get passed. But it was kind of like joining the club. Nobody was really happy when everything was done. Tempers were short, and it was pretty difficult.